The boarding house door slammed so violently the boys jumped. Sarah didn't. She had long ago trained herself not to, Mrs. Pritchard stood rigid in the doorway, arms folded tight over her stiff white apron, her expression as merciless as the Wyoming winter settling over the town. "I don't rent rooms to women without husbands," she said coldly. "It damages my reputation." Sarah pulled her youngest closer. 5-year-old Tommy trembled beneath a thin wool blanket. Ben, only 8, stood tall at her side, trying hard to look braver than he felt. Jacob, 11 and already burdened with too much understanding, climbed back onto the wagon seat, jaw clenched, eyes burning. "Please," Sarah said quietly, "just for tonight. The storm's coming. Should have thought of that before your husband got himself killed." Mrs. Pritchard stepped inside and shut the door. The lock clicked. Sarah remained on the porch as the first heavy flakes began to fall, thick, wet snow clinging to her hair and lashes. She could feel the town watching. Every window along Main Street glowed with lamplight, faces hovering behind glass like silent judges. No one stepped forward. Across the street, Mr. Calhoun stood inside his bank, arms crossed, a thin curl at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't quite a smile. It was the look of a man who enjoyed watching someone fall. "Ma," Ben whispered. "What do we do?" Sarah turned toward their wagon. Everything they owned fit into 2 battered trunks. One weary horse with ribs showing, 3 boys, no money, no family for 200 miles. She looked toward the wilderness trail disappearing into dark hills. The temperature was dropping fast. The wind was rising. "If we stay here, we freeze," she said, climbing onto the wagon seat. "We'll camp past the ridge," Tommy whimpered. Jacob said nothing. The wagon creaked forward. Snow settled across the boys' shoulders like pale burial cloths. At the edge of town, Sarah glanced back once. Every light in Coldwater burned warm and bright. Every door stayed shut. She turned away. They were a mile into darkness when she saw him. A rider stood on the ridge above, outlined against the dying light. Still, watching, her hand slid toward the rifle hidden beneath the seat. The rider descended slowly. He didn't ask her name. Didn't ask her story. He simply turned his horse and said, "Follow me." Her grip tightened on the rifle. "I don't know you." "No, ma'am." His voice was low and steady, not warm, but not cruel. "But I know that trail leads nowhere. And I know this storm will kill you and those boys before midnight. We'll manage." "You won't." Tommy's teeth chattered so hard Sarah could feel it through her coat. Ben hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. Even Jacob had surrendered to the cold, hat pulled low. The rider waited. Snow gathered along the brim of his hat. "Why?" she asked. He turned his horse. "Follow or don't, your choice." She followed. The cabin appeared 20 minutes later, small, weathered, but solid. Smoke curled from its chimney. A barn stood behind it. And beyond the barn, a single wooden grave marker. The rider dismounted and pushed open the door. Firelight spilled outward, warm and gold. "Inside," he said. "All of you?" The boys stumbled toward the heat like moths. Sarah paused at the threshold. The man pulled down a canvas sheet and strung it across the room with practiced ease. "Boys, take the bed." "I'll sleep in the barn." "I don't take charity," Sarah said. He glanced at her from beneath the shadow of his hat. "Then call it a trade, you cook." "I'll pretend it's charity so my pride survives." Tommy collapsed near the hearth. Ben followed. Jacob stayed standing, watchful, studying the stranger. The cabin was sparse but clean. Everything in order. A man who lived alone, a man who had lived alone for a long time. "There's stew in the pot," he said. "Beans in the barrel, feed them." "I'll tend your horse." He stepped outside before she could answer. Through the frosted window, Sarah watched him lead her exhausted mare toward the barn. He moved slowly, murmuring softly to the animal. Then he stopped at the grave, removed his hat. Snow collected on his shoulders. He stood there like a man who had forgotten how to come back inside. Tommy was asleep within minutes, curled against Ben. Jacob sat by the fire, arms wrapped around his knees. "Who is he, Ma?" "I don't know," she answered softly, but she looked again toward the grave. 2 names carved into wood, Alina and Daniel Tucker, 1879, 3 years gone, and the man still slept in the barn. 3 days passed after the storm. The snow stopped. The cold did not. Sarah refused to sit idle. She patched his shirts, cooked meals that tasted of more than survival, restored order to the quiet disarray grief had left behind. The boys worked too. Jacob hauled water from the creek with solemn determination. Ben chopped kindling with fierce cheerfulness. Tommy followed Cole everywhere, silent and wide-eyed. Cole wasn't used to being watched. He sat on the porch carving a small wooden horse, hands trembling not from cold but memory. Daniel had been 5 when the fever came. Same age as Tommy, same searching eyes. Eleanor had begged him to fetch the doctor, but the storm had been brutal. The town too far. By the time he returned, the knife slipped. Blood welled from his thumb. "Mr. Tucker," he looked up. Sarah stood in the doorway, flour dusting her hands. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." She came anyway, tearing a strip from her apron, wrapping his thumb with steady gentleness. Her hands were rough, scarred, widow's hands. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? For all of it." She sat beside him. "You didn't have to help us." "Yes," he said, looking toward the grave. "I did." Before she could answer, hoofbeats echoed along the trail. Cole stood instantly, hand moving toward the rifle by the door. Deputy Walsh rode into view, red-faced and uneasy. "Tucker," he dismounted and handed over a folded letter. "From Reverend Mills and Mr. Calhoun." Cole read it once, then again. "Mr. Tucker, a widow residing unchaperoned in your home presents an improper situation. For the sake of decency and your reputation, we advise she be encouraged to move along. Town resources can assist with relocation." The counsel Sarah had gone pale, reading over his shoulder. "Tell them," Cole said calmly, folding the paper, "she's staying until spring." Walsh shifted. "Cole, Calhoun's serious. He can cause trouble." "Tell them." The deputy left. Cole crushed the note in his fist. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "I won't let them ruin you for helping us." He stared toward the grave marker. "They already ruined me, ma'am," he said quietly, 3 years ago, and he kept looking at the cross in the snow. "This might be the first thing I've done right since that afternoon." Cole said it quietly, almost to himself, as he set the first beam into place. He began framing 2 new walls off the east side of the cabin, fresh timber against old grief. Jacob appeared beside him, holding a hammer that looked oversized in his thin hands. "What's it for?" the boy asked. Cole drove a nail clean through the board. "Reckon you boys need a proper room, can't sleep on the floor forever." Jacob studied him carefully. "Why are you doing this?" Another nail, solid, certain. "Because you're here," Cole said, "and you need it." Jacob didn't respond. He simply picked up a board and held it steady. By sunset, the skeleton of the room stood against the darkening sky. Inside the cabin, Sarah watched from the window, one hand resting against the cold glass. Cole never turned toward her, but he felt her gaze like warmth across his back. For the first time in 3 years, the weight pressing against his chest eased, just enough for a full breath. The addition rose slowly, one log at a time, one nail driven true like trust built in inches. December bled into January. Jacob learned to notch logs properly, measure twice, cut once. Ben fetched tools and sang the songs Sarah had taught him, cheerful even in the cold. Tommy held nails in both fists, offering them up like treasures. Cole taught them to track rabbit prints in snow, red wind shifts in the sky, split wood without wasting motion. And in the evenings, Sarah taught him. At first, it embarrassed him. She would sit beside him with her late husband's Bible open across her lap, pointing to the words patiently. "The Lord is my shepherd," Cole read haltingly one night. "I shall not want." "Good," Sarah said softly. "Again." The boys slept behind the canvas divider. The fire burned low. Her shoulder brushed his. He read it again. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, something warmer than flame began to grow, but the town had not forgotten. They came on a bright Saturday morning, 4 men on horseback. Mr. Calhoun led them, Reverend Mills at his side, 2 elders riding behind like silent judges. Cole met them in the yard. Sarah and Jacob watched from the porch. "Tucker," Calhoun said smoothly. "We're here as friends." "That's so? This situation," Calhoun gestured lazily toward Sarah, "reflects poorly on you, on the church, on decency." Reverend Mills cleared his throat. "Christian charity is admirable, Brother Tucker, but a man alone with a widow appearances matter." "She's a widow with 3 children," Cole said flatly. "Where do you suggest they go?" "The county has resources," Calhoun replied. "Orphanages?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling but loud. "You will not take my boys," Calhoun's smile sharpened. "Mrs. Brennan, without property or means, the county has authority." "She's under my protection," Cole said. The words came harder than he meant them to. The men exchanged glances. Your protection, Calhoun repeated slowly. Some might say you're exploiting her situation. Her late husband's mining shares remain unclaimed. Valuable, I'm told. Cole's jaw tightened. The lie was clever, crafted to make him either predator or fool. Accidents happen, Calhoun added lightly. Fires, fences cut. Wells spoiled. Is that a threat? Just neighborly concern. They rode away. Cole stood in the yard long after the dust settled, fists clenched. Sarah waited until they were gone. You should have defended us. I know. Then why didn't you? He had no answer. Fear had locked his throat, fear of fighting and losing again. Fear of standing against men who had already taken everything from him once. That night, Sarah began packing quietly. The half-built room stood under moonlight, unfinished, like everything else. Then the blizzard came, 3 days of merciless wind and white fury. No warning, no escape. The boys huddled under quilts while Sarah invented games to distract them. Cole kept the fire roaring, coffee strong. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, silence broke first. Sarah sat staring into the flames, eyes empty. Cole recognized that look. He'd worn it for 3 years. Talk to me, he said. About what? Anything. She looked toward the boys sleeping in a pile like puppies. Their father was a good man, she whispered. Careful. Steady, I begged him not to go into the mine that day. I had a dream, I knew something was wrong. Her voice cracked. The shaft collapsed. 20 men died. I couldn't save him. Cole nodded slowly. I couldn't save mine either. He swallowed hard. Fever came fast. Eleanor begged me to fetch the doctor. I rode through the storm all night. By the time I got back, the words splintered in his throat. He was gone. Sarah's hand found his. You can't fight a storm. I should have tried harder. You would have died too, she said. Then there'd be 3 graves out there. He looked at her fully then. Her face was lined with work and grief, but her eyes were clear, honest, still fighting. You saved your boys, he said quietly. That's more than most ever do. Her composure shattered. She wept silent, shaking sobs pulled from somewhere deep and buried. Cole held her awkwardly, carefully, as if holding something fragile and sacred. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red but steady. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me? The kiss was hesitant at first, almost uncertain. Then deeper, grief recognizing grief, loneliness finding shelter. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, 2 broken people remembered how to be warm. Morning came bright and clean. Sunlight flooded the cabin. Sarah was packing when Cole found the papers. County seals, legal threats. Eviction notices. He read them twice, blood running cold. What is this? They'll take my boys, she said without looking at him. If I can't prove I have property, a home. Means when? End of February, sooner if Calhoun pushes. Cole stared at the documents. Not while I'm breathing, he said. She shook her head. You can't fight the law. Watch me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band, his wife's wedding ring. He pressed it into her palm. Wear it in town. Let them think what they want. Cole, I mean it, he said firmly. You and those boys, you're mine now. She stared at him for a long moment, then she slid the ring onto her finger. Outside, snow began to melt. Spring was coming, but the fight was just beginning. The town hall was packed that Sunday, every family, every whispering neighbor. Sarah sat in the back, the ring heavy on her hand. Cole stood near the front, hat in hand. Mr. Calhoun presided like a king in borrowed righteousness. It has come to our attention, Calhoun announced, that Mr. Tucker may be exploiting Mrs. Brennan's circumstances to claim her late husband's mining shares. Gasps rippled. Either he manipulates a vulnerable widow, Calhoun continued smoothly, or he has been manipulated himself. All eyes turned to Cole. Do you have anything to say? Reverend Mills asked. Sarah willed him to speak, to fight, to stand. Cole opened his mouth, closed it, said nothing. Calhoun smiled. In the absence of clarity, I move that the county take custodial interest in Mrs. Brennan's minor children. He did not manipulate me, Sarah said, standing, and I am not a fool. Mrs. Brennan, I understand perfectly, she said coldly. You want my husband's claim. And you want Cole's land for its water rights. The room exploded in whispers. Calhoun's face darkened. Careful, ma'am. Or what? You'll ruin me. You already have. She walked out. Behind her, she heard the whisper. Always knew Tucker was weak, couldn't even save his own family. The words cut deeper than the wind. She didn't wait. She drove back alone. At dawn, she packed. Removed the ring, placed it gently on the table. Ma, Ben whispered. We're leaving. Jacob stood in the doorway, already dressed. He let them talk about you like that. I know. I hate him. She pulled him close. No, you don't. But she didn't argue. She hitched the horse, loaded the wagon. Cole appeared in the doorway as the sun rose. Face hollow, hands empty. He didn't call out, didn't chase them. He only watched as the wagon rolled away. Sarah did not look back. Behind him, the half-finished room stood silent, unfinished, like every promise. Cole sat beside the grave that evening, the whiskey bottle half empty. I failed you, Ellie, he whispered. Failed Daniel, his voice broke. And now I failed them too. The grave did not answer, it never did. He hadn't touched whiskey since Alina's funeral, but tonight the weight crushed him. I'm a coward, Cole muttered to the grave. You married a coward. The wind answered with nothing. He stared at the wooden cross until his vision blurred. For a moment he considered it, packing up, riding west, disappearing into the mountains where broken men went to fade slow and quiet. It would be easier, cleaner. Then he saw Tommy's small face in his mind. Ben's off-key singing, Jacob's furious, wounded pride, Sarah's rough hands wrapped around his bleeding thumb. He imagined them in some collapsing shack, freezing while the county circled like wolves. I don't know how to fix this, he whispered. Hoofbeats broke the silence. Cole looked up. Old Moses dismounted without ceremony. 60 years old, skin dark as midnight, shoulders broad as an oak beam, once a slave. Now the finest blacksmith in 3 counties and the only man in Coldwater who had never judged him. You done feeling sorry for yourself? Moses asked. Not yet. Well, hurry up. We got work to do, Cole frowned. What work? Moses pulled a folded document from his coat and handed it over. A land deed, 40 acres, water rights included, free and clear. My land, Moses said. Signed and ready, Cole stared at him. What am I supposed to do with this? You're supposed to give it to her, Moses replied. Make her a landowner legal. Then you're supposed to stand in front of that whole damn town and dare them to say otherwise. Cole's hands shook. I can't. Moses stepped closer, voice sharp as hammered steel. You think Alina would want you hiding? You think she'd want you letting them boys freeze while you sit here drowning? I didn't save her. No, you didn't. Moses gripped his shoulder hard. And you can't, she's gone, Daniel's gone, but Sarah's alive, them boys are alive, you can save them. What if I fail again? Then you fail fighting, Moses said. That's better than dying on your knees. Cole looked at the grave. In memory, Alina's voice whispered soft as summer wind, be brave, love, he stood. Where is she? Old line shack. 5 miles north. She might not take me back, Moses shrugged. Only one way to find out. Cole rode first to the county office. It was past midnight when he pushed through the door. I need to file a transfer, he said. The clerk blinked at him. It's near midnight. Then we'll work quick. He signed slowly, carefully, the way Sarah had taught him, each letter deliberate, legal. Binding, you sure about this, Tucker? The clerk asked. Cole folded the papers. Never been more sure. He rode north under a sky blazing with cold stars. Hold on, he whispered into the wind. I'm coming. Sunday morning, Coldwater's church was packed. Reverend Mills stood mid-sermon when the doors opened. Cole's spurs rang sharp against the floorboards. Every head turned. Tucker, Calhoun began. Sit down, Cole said evenly. Gasps rippled through the pews. He walked down the aisle, boots heavy, heart steady now. You want to judge Sarah Brennan? He called out. Judge me, I asked her to stay. I built her a home. If that's improper, then your God and mine ain't acquainted. Mr. Tucker, Reverend Mills stammered. Cole held up the deed. This is 40 acres. Water rights included, transferred legally to Sarah Brennan. She's a property owner now. Her boys have a home. Any questions? Calhoun stood, face flushed purple. You fool. You signed away your future for a woman who, for family, Cole cut in. Something you wouldn't understand. He stepped closer. It's an outrage you turned a widow and 3 boys into a blizzard. That you tried to steal what little they had left, that you sat warm and called it righteousness. Silence fell, thick, heavy. I'll stand with her till the ground takes me, Cole said. Any man here got issue with that, step forward. No one moved, then Moses stood. I stand with him. The schoolteacher rose. So do I, 3 ranchers, the widow, Henderson, the livery owner, not all. But enough. Calhoun shoved past, storming out. Reverend Mills cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways. Cole was already gone, 5 miles north. Sarah heard hooves and reached for the rifle. Then she saw him, hat in hand. Head bowed, Tommy broke first, running full tilt. Cole caught him, holding tight. Ben wrapped around his waist. Jacob stood still, arms crossed, eyes shining. "I'm sorry," Cole said. "I was afraid, and I let fear make me small." "You left us," Jacob said. "I know." Cole met his gaze. "And I'll regret that till my last breath. But I'm here now, and I ain't leaving again." Jacob stepped forward, leaned into him. Cole held all three boys at once. Then he looked at Sarah. She stood apart, unreadable. He handed her the papers. She read them twice. "You gave me Moses's land. It's yours, legal, whether you want me in it or not," he swallowed. "I stood in front of the whole town, told them you were mine, told them I'd stand with you till the ground takes me. I should have done it sooner." Sarah reached into her pocket, pulled out the ring she had left behind, slid it back onto her finger. "Then make it real, Cole Tucker," she said softly. "Make it a family." His face broke, half laugh, half sob. He kissed her. The boys cheered loud enough to scare birds from the trees. 3 months later, spring rolled across the valley. The cabin stood strong now, the addition complete. 2 proper rooms. A wide porch where Sarah shelled peas while watching the boys run wild. Cole taught Jacob to ride, patient, proud. Ben planted a garden with Sarah, singing the entire time. Tommy followed Cole everywhere, small shadow, endless questions. Old Moses married them beside the creek. Simple, honest. Sarah wore wildflowers in her hair. Cole's hands trembled during his vows, but his voice never did. Town women began visiting, hesitant at first. Most brought bread, some brought apologies. Calhoun left Marcus in disgrace, his schemes exposed. The land flourished. One evening, as the sun sank golden across the valley, they stood together in the doorway. Behind them, Eleanor and Daniel's grave was circled with wildflowers the boys had planted. Cole rested a hand on Jacob's shoulder. Sarah held Tommy, who clutched the wooden horse Cole had finally finished. Ben chased fireflies barefoot in the tall grass. "You ready?" Sarah asked. Cole looked at them, his family. 3 years of grief, 3 months of fear, all washed clean by one simple choice to be brave. "I'm home," he said. Sarah smiled. "So are we." The sun slipped behind the mountains. The meadowlark sang. They went inside together. The door closed gently behind them. Home wasn't something you found, it was something you built. One hard day, one brave choice at a time. Outside, the grave stood peaceful in twilight. Remembered, honored, but life belonged to the living, and at last, life was good.